Thank you, Rich. Okay, let me get right into it. First with a question here, show of hands. Who has a CCW and carries every day? Not many, but that's normal. We will get more CCWs as time goes by. I don't know if Mike had mentioned some numbers yesterday, but if I had to guess, I would say we're closing in on 2,000 CCWs in the county now, which is still far below the national average. But how many here are planning on getting a CCW?
One day.
Okay. How many of you have already submitted an application? Okay, what's the hold up with the rest of you? It takes a minute. Estimate at least a year that it might take. You can probably speed up the process by pestering them and calling in, finding out if anybody else has canceled their appointment so that you can get in earlier. My appointment originally, so I got mine with the good cause way back when. My appointment would have been in December, but I called ahead and eventually they said, yes, something opened up, and I got in April. So do that and maybe you can speed it up a little bit. But let's talk about what to do when you actually have your CCW and you carry regularly. And when you have your CCW, I do encourage you that you carry regularly, as regular as daily. Why you are getting a CCW, that is a very individual question. That is probably different for each and one of you. One thing that I encourage everybody to think about before you get your CCW is if it is the right choice for you. For most people, it probably is, and I encourage as many people as possible to do it, but there are some circumstances where it might not be appropriate for you. For example, if you have very strict religious guidelines that will not allow you to take a life, you need to know that before you get your CCW, because if you're in the moment and you start thinking about it then, that's not a good position to be in. So you need to be aware of that before you even get your CCW. If you need to do less lethal options, you better be aware of that beforehand. If you ever are in a situation where you have to defend yourself with force, be it lethal force or any other type of force. So you've chosen to get a CCW, presumably with the intention to defend a life, right? Either your own, your family, or somebody else. You've gone through the training, you've taken your class, you've done your considerations based on your personal situation. You are now ready to defend a life. But are you ready to take a life? Because once you have a CCW and you carry a gun, the amount of force that gun projects is lethal force, right? So if you have a choice to use less lethal options first, and if that's appropriate, obviously you are morally and legally required to use less than lethal force. But once those options are exhausted, you have to resort to lethal force, right? And that's what the firearm is appropriate for. If you are ever in that situation, and I pray that nobody here will ever be in that situation, there are several things that you need to consider, and there were probably other presentations that talk about the legal aftermath of a justified shooting. That is a very complicated topic. There's a lot to learn about that. We're not discussing that in this presentation. You can probably take several 8-hour classes on that topic alone. I encourage everybody to do that. The CCW class that you're going to take with your instructor after you apply goes into that a little bit, but that is a really, really broad topic that is very, very important for everybody who carries to be proficient in. Because if you use lethal force thinking that you're justified, but the law says you're not, that's going to be a big problem. The other thing is the emotional aftermath. I do teach a class that goes into that a little bit. Your body will, if you're ever in a situation having to use lethal force, your body will choose some reactions for you that you might not see coming. You think you're prepared, and you've reflected on it, you've meditated on it, you've seen videos, you've taken the class. Your body will very likely react in a way that you cannot control. And the mental health aftermath can be surprising to a lot of people, and it may not happen immediately. You may have some reactions weeks or months later. That is something that is also very important to consider. So now that you've gone through all of those considerations, you're going to buy a gun. Who here is a gun owner? Who here thinks the gun that they have is appropriate for concealed carry? Okay, very good. When you go and buy a gun, you obviously have to choose the gun that is right for each one of you. Everybody has a different physique, different strength, different size hands. The gun, if they were to carry, let's say, Danny DeVito and Shaquille O'Neal would not be using the same gun. So find the gun that's right for you, and find the gun that is not only right for you, but right for the circumstances. A lot of people have several different carry guns that they carry in different situations. If you are at the beach, you have less concealment options than if you are in your place of business, depending on what you're wearing. That is a consideration as well. So you have to get different guns, different holsters. You conceal it on different locations on your body. Those are all considerations that you have to make. Then you get your CCW. And now we're talking about accessories. This is where it gets fun, because the guys get to buy a lot of gear. Ladies get to buy all new clothes and purses. There are designated or specially made concealed carry purses that have extra compartments if you cannot carry on your body because of limitations with your dress. I'm not going to do any gear review here or product reviews. There's plenty of advice you can get online. There's a YouTube video about everything. I encourage you to look that up. I'll get back into that in a little bit. So you've taken the CCW class that contains a little bit of training on drawing, on shooting, marksmanship, as well as the legal aspects of it. But I encourage everybody to get additional training, right? You can start getting that training before you decide to carry online. There's good videos out there that have very good advice. Later, get training in person and get insurance. That is very, very important. Get insurance. There is CCW insurance out there. I personally use USCCA. I'm not endorsing them over anybody else. I've just, did a little bit of reading. Those are the guys that I chose. Whatever you choose, that's up to you. But that is very important, because the legal aftermath of a shooting, of a justified shooting, can be extremely expensive. The insurance will help you out with that, and probably help you out with avoiding jail time and all that sort of stuff, because they refer lawyers to you. I very, very strongly encourage everybody look into that and get some materials and compare. So now we have our CCW. We've done our forethought. We have our CCW. We have our gun. Now we're carrying. We are concealing. What does concealed mean? The dictionary says concealed means to keep secret or hidden. With that being said, when you carry concealed, concealed means concealed. There is a so who here knows what printing means? Printing, that's a term that we use when you carry a gun concealed, but your clothes are so tight that you can see the outline of your gun under the clothes. That is not exposed. That is still concealed. Okay? That is not ideal, but it's not illegal. Printing is not exposed carry. Okay? So printing is okay legally. We want to avoid that because we carry concealed, because we want to maintain the tactical advantage, among other things. So avoid printing if you can. How about accidental exposure? The classic example is, and I cannot do this with this shirt, if I reach something in the top shelf in the supermarket, this rides up. If I were to carry right now, you could see the gun right here. That is not brandishing. Okay, so brandishing is, according to California Penal Code 417, 417, who here knows what brandishing is, the legal definition? One person, okay. Brandishing means to draw or exhibit a deadly weapon or firearm in a rude, angry, or threatening manner in the presence of another. Okay, so if you have your gun out at home while you're cleaning it, that's obviously not brandishing. But also, if you're in the office with, let's say, one other coworker, and your place of business allows you to carry there, which most don't, but let's just assume, and you show off your new gun that you have, and you let them know, hey, look what I got. I want to show you my new gun. And then you show it off in a safe manner, maintaining the safety rules and everything. That is not brandishing, right? Because it's neither rude, nor angry, nor threatening. If another person now walks in, you're still not doing any of those things, even if the other person is uncomfortable with it. You would be wise to put the gun away again and talk to that person and explain what you were doing, and maybe you apologize, you thought you were by yourself, whatever. But that still is not brandishing, okay? You might get into trouble at work using this example, but you know, for the purpose of the argument, that is all not brandishing, okay? So we talked about printing. Okay, let's talk about when and where you can carry. Now, first of all, you can carry without a license, without a CCW, in a couple of places. At your residence, at your place of business, not the place where you are employed, but it's your business, right? You can carry at your place of business where you are employed with the permission of the employer, because if not, then I'll fire you. For most places, that is an insurance thing. They, you know, the insurance says we don't want guns here because it's too expensive to work with that if anything ever were to happen. So your residence, your place of business, a temporary campsite. You can carry at a temporary campsite. There is, I don't think, a very good definition. That's kind of a vague term. A temporary campsite, let's say you're out in the woods camping, is probably within a reasonable radius around your fire, right? Let's say you have a triangular campsite with your sleep site here, 100 feet away is your cooking site, and 100 feet away is your food storage in the other direction, and you create a triangle. Anywhere inside that triangle, I guess, would be reasonable to assume that that is your temporary campsite. But that would also include, for example, a homeless encampment. I don't know there's many homeless people that carry. I hope not. But then again, it would be perfectly legal if that is not a prohibited person. However unusual that might be, but that would be technically legal. Temporary campsite, you can carry. Hotel room. You can carry at your hotel room because that is temporarily your residence. Once you walk out into the public areas of the hotel, the lobby, then you need a CCW to carry there, okay? There are a couple of prohibited places, such as bars, which are defined as a place whose main purpose it is to serve alcohol for on-site consumption. I would argue a bar's main purpose is to provide entertainment, but that's me. The secure area of an airport, police stations, federal property, such as post office or military bases, courthouses. Let's see, what am I forgetting? Anybody know any other places?
Schools.
Schools, yes. Schools, school campuses. That includes in-home daycares. Okay, anything that's governed by the Board of Education. Post office, yes. Any federal property, which is ironic because the document that guarantees us the exercise of the Second Amendment I would argue, puts limits on the federal government. But that's details. Now, the sheriff yesterday talked a little bit about a bill that's in the works that'll go into effect in January that'll expand on that. I have to do some reading on that. I'm not 100% on all of those places, but we'll expand the places where you cannot carry, even with a CCW. I think it'll include public parks and libraries. But that's one of the things where the lifestyle change comes into play. You have to keep your research and keep learning, because when the law changes, that'll affect you, and it'll affect you in a very, very meaningful way, okay? If you ever get pulled over somewhere with, or stopped somewhere with your gun on you, thinking you can carry there, but you're wrong, they don't care that you made a mistake, okay? So you have to be very vigilant whenever there is a law change. So now we know where to carry, where not to carry. There's a good mantra that says if there's a place that you wouldn't go without a gun, then don't go there with a gun either. Okay? If you live in downtown and there are certain streets that you'd like to avoid on the way home, keep avoiding them after you get your CCW. Because just because you have the gun doesn't mean the trouble goes away. All right? It'll just alter your response or your ability to respond to those kind of problems. I have a martial arts background, and I'm getting ahead of myself. So I was going to talk a little bit about the things you have to do after the shooting immediately, but let me hold off on that for a little bit. So where on your body do you carry? I talked about that a little earlier, the beach versus the office or whatever. We have to weigh accessibility versus concealment. The more concealed your gun it is, the less accessible it'll be. We live in California, in Southern California. We have the advantage of always having nice weather. But let's say you live in Boston, Chicago, New York, one of those places. Right about this time, you start layering up. You have a winter coat on. It's probably zipped up. You have gloves on, scarf and sweaters and what else. It's going to take you a whole lot longer to reach that gun. You have to take your gloves off to get the dexterity. You have to throw back the overcoat and whatnot. Those are all considerations that you have to make. Does it make sense for you to carry on your hip, under your shoulder, ankle? You know, that all depends on your situations. I don't know what your lifestyle is, and do you sit behind a desk a lot? Are you standing? Do you walk a lot for work or whatever you do? I Uber on the side, so I'm in the car a lot. If I carry appendix, well, I have to get the seatbelt off first, right? And then there's always a crease. Do you get in there quickly? Do you have to move first and stretch out? How do you get to your gun? Do you mount it in the car somewhere? Those are all things that you have to consider and think about. Some of those are all associated with additional cost. Okay, that's very important. That comes into play here. Then talking about additional training, right? So there's a lot of training that we need to do anyway as gun owners. Marksmanship is probably the most common that everybody does. That's great on the range, and you should be a good marksman. You really, really don't want to hit a bystander or something other than your intended target, which is the bad person, the bad guy. Usually it's a guy. So you want to be a decent shot, but you also want to train with an instructor. If you go to the range and you're a good marksman, that's great, but that's static training. You want to be able to hit your target accurately while you're moving. You're in motion. You want to make sure that you're aware of your surroundings. That is something that is really, really good to train with an instructor. And I encourage everybody who has a CCW and carries regularly to regularly get training. Go to the range at least once a month, not only because it's necessary to be a good marksman, it also looks really good in court if you're ever in the situation that you have to defend yourself with lethal force. Because the court will argue that you're not a good shot and you hit somebody else or you cause property damage or whatever. And your attorney will say, well, here's the records from the range. Look how often this person goes. This person is a good shot. The reason that this person missed is reasonable. Somebody else would have probably missed also. Maybe that'll be the argument, but it'll look really good. Get the training that's appropriate for your circumstances. Like I said, I sit in the car a lot. I practice drawing from a seated position. right? So you have to carry the gun in a way that's accessible in a seated position, and you practice drawing in a seated position. Wherever you do that safely, make sure that the range is okay with that. A lot of ranges will not allow you to draw from the holster, but there are some private ranges that there's somebody I can recommend if anybody has a question later, with the appropriate notice and training, and they'll make sure that you're proficient. They might let you do that. And advance in your training. Don't just go to the range and shoot at paper. Make sure that you get an instructor at least a couple of times a year. Even I myself, I go get an instructor twice a month. I go to a range with somebody else twice a month to get my training. You hit your target and you hit your bullseye maybe, but there might be other things that you're not doing right or that you could do better that you'll never know because you don't see yourself shooting. You don't see your own grip. You don't see your own stance. You don't see how you're moving. Somebody else will be great for that to help you out and make sure that you are a better shooter. Let's talk about the adjustment period. That is kind of awkward sometimes. So when you first decide to carry and you walk out the door with a gun on your body for the very first time, you're going to feel very weird. You're going to feel like you constantly have to check if it's still there. Can you see it? Is it concealed? You're always going to pull on your shirt to make sure it's, you have to get used to that first. You can start doing that before you have your CCW by carrying at home. If you're new to gun ownership and you're not comfortable, you can carry an unloaded gun, okay? Start with an unloaded gun at home, or snap caps, those training rounds that don't have any powder or projectile, that allow you to just feed the gun and manipulate it in every way that you would with live ammo, to get used to that. Then progress, carry a loaded gun. And once you are comfortable with that, get training, and then carry outside of the home with your CCW, obviously. And I encourage everybody, I said it before, if you have a CCW, carry all the time, everywhere you can. If there's a place where you can't carry, maybe you're not going there. Maybe you leave it in the car, but make sure you store it safely and correctly. And then once you're out, pick it up and carry again. Another thing that's good to have somebody else do for you, in this case, this might not have to be an instructor, but once you carry, have somebody else look at you and tell you if you walk differently, right? You're going to have extra weight on this side of your pants or on this side, depending on where you carry. Maybe you have it under the shoulder. Maybe you have a jacket with an extra pocket in it that's meant for concealment. Is the jacket lopsided? You want to make sure that you are as concealed as possible. Not just that the gun is concealed, but that the fact that you carry is concealed, okay? Make sure that you walk normal, you act normal, you get used to it, you don't constantly check, okay? You want to maintain the tactical advantage. Let's see. Oh, carry with one in the chamber. I very strongly encourage that. At first, it might feel weird, especially when you are a new gun owner and you've never carried before. Carry with one in the chamber, because if you are in that situation, and that situation might come very quickly and usually unexpected, you might not be able to put one in the chamber, okay? That all takes time. It takes time to decide whether or not you should draw. It takes time to get to your gun. It takes time to decide whether or not to take the shot, and it takes additional time to put one round in the chamber. You want to have as much time as possible. So you need to prepare for that, and that's a step you can save yourself. Not only to save the time, but you might not be able to put one in the chamber. How many hands do you typically need to put the round in the chamber? What if you're carrying grocery bags? You'd be surprised how many people have something in their hand that they should be dropping, but they don't. Because your brain doesn't work the same way under stress as it does right now. If you're faced with lethal force against yourself, your brain starts working very differently, right? So drop whatever you got if you can. What if you have a child in your arm, right? What if your other arm is injured or incapacitated in some way? Then you need to have a round in the chamber. There are ways to rack a round with one hand. That is very difficult and unnecessary in my opinion. So carry with a round in the chamber. And then some other things that you need to consider. Do you use drugs or alcohol? If you do, then maybe carry is not the right thing for you. Now, habitually, of course, I mean, right? If you are out at a party and you drink, decide risk versus reward. Do I really want to go to that party and drink? Because then you cannot carry. Or do I want to carry? Then you can't go to the party. Well, you can go to the party, but you can't drink. This includes prescription drugs. Okay, if there's anybody here who uses prescription drugs that say anything on the bottle, something like do not operate machinery, then don't carry while you're using those prescriptions. If it's a maintenance drug that you need to take, find out if there's alternatives. Talk to your doctor or your pharmacist if there's other drugs that are appropriate. Because if it comes to it, the prosecution will make an argument that you're not safe to carry, okay, and you shouldn't have carried. That can go sideways for you pretty quickly. Festivals, right? Certain festivals are prone to drug use and drinking. Don't be a part of that, okay? If you want to go there, make sure you don't have a single drink. There's a difference between, for example, drinking and driving. Drinking and driving is not illegal. Who knew that? Drinking and driving is not illegal. Driving intoxicated and under the influence, that's illegal, okay? So if you think you can have a beer and drive, okay, you know you, I don't know you. If you think that's safe, I'll leave that up to you. I would encourage everybody not to make that same calculation when you carry a firearm, okay? One drink is, in my opinion, one too many. Don't drink and carry. There's a reason why all the safety rules at the ranges say no alcohol and drugs. Let's talk about the importance of walking away. A good example is road rage, right? You carry everywhere, somebody cuts you off, let them cut you off. If you don't carry and you want to flip somebody off or yell something or throw a soda can out of your car at somebody, that's up to you. I'm not telling you what to do. But really don't do that when you carry. If you just flip somebody off, you don't intend to cause a confrontation. You don't intend to fight with somebody. But after you flip somebody off, they might want to fight with you. And then you're forced into a position where you have to draw a gun and maybe use lethal force. The prosecution will say, you instigated that. That's your fault. Okay? You have to become very level-headed. Okay? Even if you're not level-headed right now and you think you can afford to not be, you're going to have to change that. That's definitely going to have to change. You're going to have to become a very, very polite person. Hold doors, give way. If the elevator is full, take the next one. You really don't want to be put into a position where somebody interprets your actions wrong and starts something, and that gets interpreted in a way that doesn't look good for you. Less lethal alternatives. I mentioned that earlier. Who here knows what a EDC is, everyday carry? That's a term that preppers use, right? There's a couple of things that you carry every day. For most of us, that's the phone, the wallet, well, for most of us guys, the phone, the wallet, and keys, right? You're going to have to add to that a gun, an extra magazine, pepper spray, okay? We just heard from Joe in the previous presentation about pepper spray. You want to have another option, okay? Joe mentioned that in the vast majority of cases, the gun is not the appropriate tool to respond to a threat. Pepper spray is much better, and you want to be able to, not only do you want to avoid shooting somebody as much as possible, because legally and morally speaking, those are not ideal situations. But you also want to be able to prove in court that you did everything you could to avoid resorting to lethal force. Pepper spray is very inexpensive, and in a lot of cases the appropriate response. And I always have mine here. I used to have it on the key ring, but I found out that that is just too cumbersome. You get in the way with the other keys, so now I have it loose. So adjust your everyday carry. For me now is keys, phone, wallet, gun, mag, pepper spray. I have big pockets. You can kind of see that I have stuff in the pockets. But I'm not too worried about this. If my gun was printing, that'd be a different thing, different story. But this is, I'm not too worried about these items. A quote from Masad Ayub that you may know. The gun is a last resort emergency life-saving equipment. Okay, so less lethal options, in my opinion, are mandatory. You should have those on you. You may have to resort to a firearm immediately, right away. That's probably the rarest of cases. But less lethal options are, in my opinion, an absolute must. Let's see, what did I forget to talk about? I think we covered pretty much everything.
How about a knife and a flashlight?
Flashlight is a very good option, especially now that it gets dark sooner. Flashlight is a very good option. You'd be surprised how much you can accomplish with temporarily blinding an opponent with a flashlight. A knife, I'm not opposed to knives. I have a Swiss Army knife, but that I keep in the car. I consider that everyday carry because I spend so much time in the car. You really don't want to have to get that close to somebody, okay? Even if you have experience with hand-to-hand combat, martial arts, knife it may have a place. I would encourage you to use the knife only if everything else fails. I personally would use the pepper spray first, the gun second, and everything else that happens in this space is not a good situation. I encourage you to avoid letting another person get that close in the first place, because then we're talking about disparity of force, right? When you have a much stronger attacker, the knife might not do you much good. You stab the other person once, maybe twice, and then they're close enough to take it away from you, and that 1 or 2 stabs might not have done the trick. And then they strangle you, they beat you, they use the knife against you. I'm really not a fan of allowing somebody else to get that close to you, if you can, right? It's always situational. Every situation is different, but distance is better. Then I really want to stress, get the insurance. The insurance is extremely important. Mine, I think I pay $30 a month, and I get, I think, $1.5 million of coverage. They'll have, if I ever have to draw the gun, they'll have the attorney waiting for me at the jail before I get there. Get training regularly, at least once a month. Go to the range. I very strongly encourage that. Maybe twice a year minimum. Go get an instructor. Let somebody else look at what you're doing, critique you, give you tips and tricks. I think that is extremely important. Start doing that now before you carry, so that once you have the gun, you don't start at zero. Okay? You need to make sure that you're a reasonably good shot when you carry, so that you don't accidentally shoot somebody that you don't intend to shoot.